Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Let us continue with our tafsir of Surah Aal-Imraan bihawlillahi wa quwwatih. And we are on ayah number 96. قال الله تعالى إن أول بيت وضع للناس للذي ببكة مباركا وهدى للعالمين. In this ayah, Allah Jalla wa Ala turns our attention to the Kaaba. Okay, so why is this? Well, the Yahud in Al-Madinah, they would say to the Muslimin that the Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa was the first masjid for mankind. It is better than the Kaaba because it came first. The Kaaba came afterwards, like some sort of pretender or imitator. And also, this was the place of all the prophets and the place where people are going to be gathered together on Yawm al-Qiyamah. The Muslimun would give precedence to the Kaaba, of course, and so this ayah came down to judge. He says the first house, this is Bayt, meaning the first house for ibadah, not the first house merely to live in. Wudi'a, this is from the verb wada'a, yada'u, to place or to put something. So this means to be placed, or rather we may say to be appointed for mankind. Lalladhi, this lam is for tawqeed, for emphasis. It often comes after the harf inna. It adds extra emphasis. Otherwise you could say alladhi, but here it says lalladhi bi Bakka. This is Makkah, so why not say Makkah? Why say Bakka? Because the Arab would often switch the meme and the ba around. So Makkah was known as Bakka in those times. Yes, true, nowadays nobody calls it Bakka. But in those days, people would call it Bakka. And the Quran is addressing those people. And we are also being addressed in following the first generations. So Bakka comes from the root letters Bak, which means izdiham, which is when people are jostling and they're all gathered together, like in the rush hour. And this is because people are jostling together when they are making the tawaf, and this is of course in Bakka. It is also said that Bakka comes from Bak, which also means to crush the neck. And they say this is so because this city of Bakka or Makkah crushes the necks of the tyrant rulers. Okay, what about Makkah with the meme? Well, originally the verb Makka yamukku al-azm, to make muck of the bone. This is what azm is. It means to drain the marrow of the bone. They say it is so called because this draining of the marrow will cause hardship, and the city of Makkah causes hardship for the one who wants to enter it, as in it is not an easy city to live in. It is not like a luxury city where you would visit for holiday. And even today, Makkah is not the type of city you go to for a holiday. There is nothing in Makkah as a tourist attraction, nothing whatsoever. If you take away the Kaaba, then it's just some ordinary city in the middle of the desert which no one would care about. Now there are various narrations about this Kaaba. Some have said that Allah created it before even He created the earth. Some have said that the Kaaba was under the throne of Allah, and so Allah Jalla wa Ala ordered the Malaika to make something similar to it on planet Earth, and so they did. And they made Hajj. When Adam a.s. was created, Adam performed the Hajj, and the Malaika said to him, "We performed Hajj 2,000 years before you." And so these are some narrations narrated to us. We are not claiming that these are authentic narrations, but just mentioning it for your information. We do have the authentic narration though in the Sahih, where the Prophet ﷺ was asked what masjid was the first one to be built, and the Prophet replied, Al-Masjid Al-Haram. And then he was asked which was the next masjid to be built, and he said Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. This is of course in Jerusalem. And then the companion, who is Abu Dharr al-Ghifari radiallahu anhu, said that I asked the Prophet what was the period between these two, and the Prophet replied 40 years. And the way to understand this narration is that Ibrahim alayhi salam built the Kaaba, as is well known, and then his grandson Yaqub alayhi salam, the son of Ishaq of course, built the Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa after, and so 40 years would seem like an appropriate time span. As for his saying Mubarakan, which means blessed from Barakah, Barakah coming from the word Birkah, which means a pond, because inside a pond, what do you see? You see much water which stays. And so Barakah is much goodness which stays, as opposed to disappearing quickly. That is not Barakah. So what type of blessing are we talking about? Well, first of all, we could talk about the Hajj. That is an obvious blessing, because the one who performs the Hajj properly, his previous sins are forgiven and he comes out like the day he was born. We are also talking about the incredible reward of performing the Salah in that masjid. It is more virtuous than any other Salah in a masjid. We are also talking about food. Much food and drink is brought to Makkah, despite the fact that it's in the middle of a desert, and yet it is rich with food and drink. Ibrahim alayhi salam made dua that Allah should bless the food and drink of the people of Makkah. From its blessings is the Zamzam water, which is found nowhere else on planet Earth, and it is a blessed water. Its history is well known. From the blessing is trade, because during the Hajj season many people are brought together, which is also a valuable opportunity for trade, and this is perfectly halal. And of course, from its blessings is that this is the city from which emerged the last prophet. Notice the word Mubarakan is mansub bil fatha. Why? Because it is a hal. It is the hal of the word alladhi, and alladhi refers to the first house. And he says wahudan, and as a guide, lil alamin, for mankind. So this means man and jinn. And it is a guide for mankind and jinnkind in various ways. First of all, with the Hajj and the Umrah, that can only be performed in the city of Makkah. So when you perform these acts of worship, you are guided. And if you do not perform these acts of worship, you are misguided. Likewise with the Salah, everybody faces Makkah, wherever you are in the world. And that's guidance, because if you did not face Makkah, that would be misguidance. So you can see how this city is such a central and focal point for all the Muslimin. Ayah 97. فيه آيات بينات مقام إبراهيم ومن دخله كان آمنا ولله على الناس حج البيت من استطاع إليه سبيلا ومن كفر فإن الله غني عن العالمين. This ayah is the pivotal ayah in the Quran, denoting the obligation of the Hajj. It came down in the 9th year, but it begins by saying fihi, in it, meaning in Makkah, there are ayat bayyinat, there are clear signs, meaning clear signs of its virtue. This is primarily referring to the masha'ir, or the places of the Hajj. So of course Kaaba is one of them, then you have the Mas'a, the Safa and Marwa, and then the distance between them where you walk, and also between the two markers where the men make Ramal. You've got your Arafah, then you have your Muzdalifah, you have your Mina. And from these signs also, what the ayah itself mentions, the maqam, which means the place of standing of Ibrahim. So this is a stone which Ibrahim alayhi salam stood on to build the Kaaba. His son Ismail alayhi salam was handing him over the stones, and Ibrahim was placing them to build the Kaaba. And this stone of his exists today even. It used to be right next to the Kaaba, but then Umar ibn al-Khattab, when he was the Khalifa, moved it further back so as to make room for those making tawaf. He says whoever enters it, meaning enters the Al-Masjid al-Haram, will be safe, meaning he cannot be attacked. Al-Hasan al-Basri radiyallahu anhu said that during the Jahiliyyah times, a man would murder another man, and the son of the murdered man would see the murderer making tawaf, and he would not take revenge on him. This is how much the people of Jahiliyyah venerated the Haram and the Masjid al-Haram and the Kaaba. This ayah can also be understood as an order form, meaning whoever enters it, then you people are ordered not to harm him. Even the game animals of the Haram are not allowed to be harmed, not even disturbed. And then he talks about the obligation of the Hajj, the Hajjul Bayt, or you could say Hajjul Bayt, same thing. Hajj means qasd, to intend. So Hajj is when you go out to intend the house, as in the Kaaba, to perform certain acts of ibadah. So this is an act of ibadah to Allah Jalla wa Ala, in which you intend the house of Allah, which is the Kaaba, for certain rituals, or what we call in Arabic manasik. He says the one who is istita'a, has the ability, from istita'a yastadi'u istita'atan, to be able to. Ilayhi, to it, meaning to the Kaaba, sabila. Sabil means a way. Sabilan is mansub al-fatha because it is maf'ul bihi. It is a passive participle of the verb istata'a, meaning able to. The one who is able to make a way there. Then he says, وَمَنْ كَفَرَ, whoever makes kufr, then Allah is ghani, meaning free of any need, عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ, from mankind, meaning Allah does not need anyone from mankind or jinn kind or anyone else for that matter. So what is this kufr being spoken of? Some ulama use this ayah to say that the one who does not perform Hajj, if he is able to do so, is a kafir, just like the one who does not pray. But the better and dominant opinion on this matter is that the kufr in this ayah refers to the one who denies the obligation of the Hajj. So this is major kufr. Denying the obligation of any major act of ibadah, be it the shahada, salah, zakah, siyam or hajj, is kufr. As for the one who does not perform the Hajj when he is able to do so, then he is a major sinner, but not a kafir. Notice how he says that Allah is not in need of the whole of mankind. He does not say that Allah is not in need of the kuffar. So he's giving us a more general statement, so as to tell us that he is not in need of the kuffar nor the Muslims. Allah is in need of nobody. So it's much more emphatic than saying that Allah is not in need of the kuffar. So reflecting on these two ayatan, we take the virtue of the Kaaba and that it is superior to the Al-Masjid al-Aqsa as it came before all other masajid, and an older masjid is better and more virtuous, all else being equal, than a newer masjid. We find that ultimately the Kaaba was the prayer direction for all the prophets, but it's just that the Christians changed it and faced the east, and the Jews changed it to Bayt al-Maqdis. But the original masjid and the original prayer direction was the Kaaba. We find that the Kaaba is a blessed place, it has ayat, and it is a guidance for mankind, and we spoke about that before. We take the virtue of the Maqam of Ibrahim, whose footprints are still in existence today on the stone. Note, however, there is another opinion about the Maqam of Ibrahim, Maqam meaning place of standing. So the other opinion says it is not necessarily that stone with his footprints on, but rather it is all the places Ibrahim a.s. stepped foot on to perform the rituals of the Hajj. So it includes various places then. Mina, Muzdalifah, Arafah, all of these would be included. So do take note of that opinion. We take the obligation of the Hajj upon mankind. That includes kuffar as well, only we tell the kafir to embrace Islam first, then perform the Hajj after. And this obligation is for the one who is able to make a way there. Of course, ability is a condition for all acts of ibadah, but in particular for the Hajj, it is such an ibadah which drains you out much more, physically and financially. This is why the istita'ah is mentioned specifically here. So the ability is generally when you have the health and the wealth. If you do not have the health, but you do have the wealth beyond your basic necessities, then you are required to appoint somebody to perform the Hajj on your behalf. We also learn that the one who denies the obligation of the Hajj, which is what this ayah is talking about, is a kafir. And we mentioned this before. We also realize that Allah Jalla wa Ala is free of all of mankind and jinn kind and everything else. He only institutionalizes these acts of ibadah for our benefit, not for His benefit. We would then conversely learn that if Allah is free of mankind, then mankind and every other creation for that matter is in need of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Now why is this vital? Somebody may ask you a question. They say, is there a possible world in which Allah is not worshipped? If you say yes, there is a possible world in which Allah is not worshipped, they'll respond by saying, in which case Allah is not a deity, because a deity is something which is worshipped. Then you might say, okay, well, no, there is no such a world in which Allah is not worshipped, meaning any possible existence you can think of, Allah is being worshipped by at least some people or some things. But to that they might reply, in this case Allah needs someone at least to worship Him, in which case Allah is needy. We say in response to this that even if everyone and everything in the world rebelled against Allah and did not worship Allah, then Allah is still a deity worthy of worship. Whether somebody worships Him or not is irrelevant. The fact is Allah is still worthy of worship by the mere fact that He is the creator, owner and sustainer of all that which exists. So even if existence rebels against Allah, they are still in need of Allah for existence. And that makes Allah their Rabb. The divine nature of Allah Jalla wa Ala means that He is worthy of worship, come what may. Similarly, if you find a lion being born, so it's a cub, do we say this cub is a carnivore, meaning a meat eater? If you say yes, one might say, but he's not eating meat. He's drinking the milk of the mother. That is not carnivorous. But the point is, yes, at this moment he is drinking milk. But the very feline nature of this lion cub means that it is carnivorous by its nature, even though at this moment in time it is not drinking milk. You've got to look at the nature. Its nature is one that eats meat. A lion will not eat vegetables because that is not in the feline nature. Likewise with Allah Jalla wa Ala, His mere divine nature means He is worthy of worship even if everybody were to rebel against Him. Just remember, as long as we hold that Allah is the creator, owner and sustainer of all that which exists, then de facto He is worthy of worship, whether the creation rebels against Him or not. There is a hadith Qudsi which speaks to this effect, or at least similar to this effect, where Allah Jalla wa Ala says, O mankind, if all of you, the first of you and the last of you, jinn and the mankind of you, were to have the heart of the most pious person, this would not increase my dominion in aught. And if the first of you, the last of you, the jinn of you, the man of you, were to have the heart of the most rebellious person amongst you, this would not decrease my dominion in aught. So you see, to Allah Jalla wa Ala, it makes no difference whether we are obedient or rebellious. All of these orders and prohibitions are for our sake, not for Allah's sake. هذا والله أعلم.